Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Meet the Chair and CEO of Weebit interview today. Delighted to have Dadi Perlmutter, Chair, and Coby Hanoch, CEO of Weebit, to present to investors this afternoon. Just a couple of housekeeping points. I'll be moderating the conversation. My name is Ron Betchler from Marketeye. If you have any questions, please put them through the Q&A, and we'll endeavour to answer as many as possible through this session. Coby will have a short presentation that he will do at the start, just providing a quick overview of what's been happening over the last few months, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So please remember, if you would like to ask any questions, please put them through the Q&A facility at the bottom of the screen. Coby, I might hand across to you to just give a short introduction, and then we can open up to questions.
Okay, thanks, Ron. I'll share my screen. Yeah, I think we're doing this session mainly since it's important for me to be transparent with the investors. I think everyone already knows that, and more recently, I've received questions. Things were not really clear to some of the investors, and I think it is important to address those things in a public way so everyone understands where exactly we are. We've really finished an amazing half year, and I think everyone knows already these things. We had both good technical progress with the technology stabilization and all the progress, the technical progress that we did. We're talking now to production fabs. I'll elaborate in a minute where we stand on that. We've progressed. We had obviously the raises that enabled us to have the funds to really give a strong push now on the technical side. That already enabled us to hire 3 key people in the form of Eran, Ilan, and Yishai that are now a significant help in the company. And overall, things have really been going well, and I'm very proud that we were also included in the ASX Technology Index. So it was a great half year, and what's important for me is to really help people understand what's ahead of us. So, we reached the stabilization, which is a key milestone in order to start talking to the production fabs. It's important to understand semiconductors is not a simple market or technology domain. We're talking about very delicate technology that is very complex or not simple to manufacture. The fabs where you manufacture it, even the simplest fabs, are $1 billion to set up and above. So it's important to understand these things take time. It's not like a pencil or a paper or even some other products that you design them and you go and you manufacture. The fabs are very sensitive. There are not that many fabs in the world, and the ones that you're talking to, you need to really work with. So we have engaged with production fabs. We're making good progress with production fabs. Things are actually, I'm feeling very good about the way we're moving forward with them. We need to reach agreements with them. Some of the investors sent me questions about, we saw that the production fabs are at full capacity, and how does that impact you? So I would like to address that already. Yes, there is a huge demand for semiconductors. I've explained in the past how the world has moved into a mode that everything depends on semiconductors today. and the fabs are really overwhelmed with demand. So some of the fabs, yes, they told us we're just too busy, we're just too full. We can't really talk about bringing new technology. We just don't have time and capacity. But there is a lot of interest in our technology. There are other fabs that are open to talking to us. We are working on creative ways to move forward. And overall, there are very good discussions. So I've also had people ask me, oh, you guys announced a delay now in your plans for a commercial agreement. We didn't announce a delay. We actually are still on track. We believe we can have a commercial agreement by the middle of the year. We're working very hard on that. We have actually quite a few potential agreements that we're discussing right now, different types of agreements of different nature. And I believe, I can't say today which one of them will be the one that we'll actually close, but we're making good progress on multiple fronts, and I believe we'll manage despite all of the challenges that we have. And I mentioned the COVID travel restrictions. That is a big challenge. It is a big challenge. You can't have the engineers go over to the production fab or to partners, customers, and go sit with them in their lab, work with them together. It does make life harder. But sometimes I joke where we come from Israel, where the word impossible is something that people don't have in the vocabulary. So we just find ways to make it happen. And we are making good progress. Yes, there is a risk, and that's why we announced it. I think Weebit is a very professional company that makes it a point to notify the investors about where it's at, and there is a certain risk that, despite all our efforts, there might be a small delay in that commercial agreement. I think we mentioned, 1 or 2 months. I still believe we'll make it without that delay, and we're very focused on that. So that's obviously our big focus. We are making very good progress also on the technical side. We got the raise now, that the money from the raises in the past half year that enabled us to enter with Leti into discussions on how we push forward faster, how we move to the 28 nanometers, how we do more things in parallel, and all of this is ramping up. We are still working very hard on the module to get that ready for transfer to production by the middle of the year. And also on the OTS, I think this is something that I can now let people know. We are making very good progress on the selector for the discrete. And we announced that we'll have the combined ReRAM plus selector cell by September. We're making very good progress on that one. And today I can already tell you that we have our next milestone lined up, which is to already have a small working array by the beginning of 2022, which is ahead of what we originally were thinking. So that's part of the acceleration that we're seeing now with the funds that we got. So overall, I think despite Corona, despite COVID and all of the restrictions and challenges, maybe even we like having challenges. It gives us more energy, and I think the company is making good progress and totally focused on getting the commercial agreement by the middle of the year. So that's kind of my overview. Open to questions.
Thanks, Coby. We have a number of questions that have been lined up. And one question that seems to come up a number of times is just around, and can you have a commercial agreement without being in a fab?
The answer is, first of all, the answer is yes. You can have agreements with customers that predict that you'll have, everything works here in parallel. So getting the technology into a fab is a process that takes time. Even when we will be transferring the technology to a fab, it's not something that happens overnight. I don't want anyone to misunderstand me. It's going to take us months to transfer the technology, to get it working in the fab, to adapt it to whatever the fab will request, and eventually have it qualified. So this is a process that happens with the fab. Obviously, fabs are also potential business partners because they license our technology as well. So, we're talking to fabs about not only about transferring the technology, we're talking about licensing of the technology as well. When you talk to customers in the embedded space, when they sign up for your technology, they want to know that it works, but in reality, it still takes them another year or so until they get their product out the door and into production. So, they need to know that your technology is in a good shape when they sign up, and you can have agreements which talk about them going to use the technology so that once they reach with their product, they are ready, that our technology will be ready at the same time. So there are many, these are just two examples of multiple types of commercial agreements that we are talking about right now. There's one of them will definitely happen. I'm very confident about our progress. I shouldn't say the word definitely. I mentioned that there is a chance of a small delay, but we're doing everything we can to make at least one of these happen by the middle of the year.
Thanks, Coby.
Just to add one short sentence. It's a work we have to do in parallel, and you can never tell at the end of the day who is going to be the first to jump in. If it's a development partner, a product partner, then we'll go together to have a fab, because fabs many times ask who will design it on, or sometimes you have the fab and they have a bunch of customers and they will sell it to. We are talking to both. And I think that at the end of the day, it's a matchmaking exercise. We are working to both sides because I think it is important at the end of the day, we'll have to have both. And who is going to be the first? We are talking to both, and both seem to be interested. And we'll have to work the details until we get it done with the first one.
Thanks, Dadi. A couple of questions maybe to you, just to give Coby's voice a little bit of a break. One question that's come up a little bit recently and has again for this session is just some shareholders want to understand the background and context to the recent director selling of a small portion of their holdings. Perhaps you could give some more color to the investors on this call.
Well, sure. Thanks, Ron. At the end of the day, we do not control the financial decisions of each of the directors. This is the first time since the company was IPO that any insider, a director or management, the high management, the CEO and directors have sold. These are very small quantities. One of them was about the tax issues. It's very common across the world. At the end of the day, directors are not obliged to hold forever. And just to remind you, two of our directors, one of them is myself, is in the top 10 holders of the company and plan to remain to be so for a long time. We have big belief in the company. That was not a sell-off, it was a small one. And I presume that in the next few years, there are going to be some here and there, people will sell, people will buy. And I think that's the nature of things. That's what's being done across the world with directors. So I view that as not a big event. I think it is something that happens regularly. and it happens rarely. And I believe that it will continue to be such with Weebit. All directors are very committed to the company.
Thanks, Dadi.
Yeah, I would actually just add the comment. Since the beginning of since the company IPO'd, directors have been participating in basically practically every funding round that we had. I think the accumulated amounts are many hundreds of thousands of dollars that the directors have invested in the company, including Dadi and myself putting in our own money. So as Dadi said, I think it's directors can't only buy and can't hold forever. It's normal that people sometimes need to also use some of their funds, and these were small amounts, so I don't think it's significant.
Thanks, Coby, and thanks, Dadi. A question also that's come up before, and there's obviously a number of investors on this call that are relatively new. Perhaps, Dadi, you can give a bit of an overview, particularly given your experience in the industry. How do you see the commercial side of things rolling out, particularly in light of the global issues around China? How important is the Chinese market to semiconductors globally? And what's kind of Weebit's position in all of this?
Well, you know, our strategy is to go sell to the two big markets for semiconductors in the world are North America and China. China is, and we mentioned that multiple times in our presentations and talks in the past, is the largest semiconductor industry. We are not going to ignore China. Just to remind you, all the big semiconductors companies in the world are selling in China. Some of them are producing in China. So I don't think there's, you know, there are limitations and you need to be careful what you do. What kind of IP, how you manage your IP is very critical, and we plan to manage it extremely carefully. We are not going to tell whoever we sell to the big IP secrets of the company. But nevertheless, it's a huge market that we are not planning to ignore. And as the rest of the semiconductor and rest of the tech companies do manufacture and do sell big time in China. And I think that's manageable and important for a company like us to participate in the largest semiconductor market. We are not ignoring, nevertheless, the North America and Europe. There are many of the discussions Coby and his team are handling are with North America partners as well. And I think it is important for us to keep both markets and manage everything with care as it's due.
Thanks, Dadi. Maybe a question for one or both of you, given both of your experiences in scaling up tech companies. In terms of Weebit, will the costs increase in a linear fashion, in a straight line, as new commercial agreements are entered into, or will they only minimally increase with each new contract?
So in the beginning, every new customer, you know, you need to do more work with them to adapt things. First of all, you need to, some customers will want us to go to new fabs where we haven't transferred the technology yet. Some of them will have special demands for all kinds of features in the memory module or things like that. So in the early phases, these new requests require additional work, and in the beginning you put in more efforts. As you progress, as you start having more customers, many of them use the same fab which you already transferred the technology to. Many of them are interested in the same functionality that others already asked for before, so you start accumulating more and more of these functions that have already been implemented. So over time, the investment in new customers keeps going down, and I think that's the key point in a growing company. When you reach steady state, when you become a big company and you have many customers, you don't need to make big investments in each one of them, and the margins grow significantly as you become a mature company.
Just on the point of obviously scaling up, another question we've got is if we meet the mid-year goal of first customer agreement, how does the revenue profile on that agreement look? Will we have first revenues within 12 months? Or how long does it take for that product to become available in market?
I think that right now it's hard for me to comment on this because we're talking about different commercial agreements, different types with different partners, and you know, each one of them has different commercial terms. So it's very hard for me now to tell you what the revenue plan will be. In general, when a customer engages and licenses the technology, normally it is a year and a half until they reach mass production and when you start seeing royalties. But some of the agreements are also, you know, they don't start in day one. In the early phases, you have all kinds of agreements which might be I don't know if to call it delayed or conditional or all kinds of things like that. So we'll see. As soon as we have the first agreement, it'll be much easier for me to clarify the revenue plans.
But in a nutshell, usually it's common that you have a licensing agreement, you have non-recurring engineering costs funded by a potential customer agreement. Until the actual product gets out of the door, it doesn't mean that we'll not have some income coming in. It's not the huge one. The bigger ones start when products start rolling out of the door. But as Coby mentioned, this takes time until they get everything designed into the product. It is what it is. And with respect to the investment, to the previous question, it's a technology company always invests in new technology. So this is the current technology and how you roll out to customers. And Coby mentioned that initially you have high-touch customers, you have relatively big investment, and then you continue to roll the technology. It's relatively easy, it's a low touch. But then you have to continue to invest in new technology because in tech, if you don't come with a new technology, you become obsolete quite soon. So, but I think if you look at the possibilities and money coming in, the amount of investment, I think we have a healthy product margin, at least we presume in our plans, that we'll be able to, the moment we start shipping, to start funding those developments.
Just a question back on fab transfers. We've got a question from one of the listeners in today, participants, that's saying, you know, given with COVID closing down international borders and making it hard to do the travel, is there any possibility of transferring locally to fabs in Israel, given there are a number of fabs in Israel?
Yeah, so obviously, I think it won't surprise you if I say that we're talking to fabs all over the world, and there isn't any reason for us not to talk to fabs in Israel. We are talking to fabs all over the world right now. I can say including fabs in Israel, and we'll you know, once we have more news, we'll announce it.
Sort of a question slightly off topic. I'm not sure either of you if you want to answer this one, but is on the agenda a possible dual listing in America, given the market over there is probably better understands the product and the potential of Weebit?
I think that it's definitely something that a lot of people ask me. You know, we get this question a lot, especially when we talk to people outside Australia. It keeps coming up. We're happy being listed in the ASX. I think up to now, and you could see the last half year, it's been, the ASX has been good to us. So we're happy being in Australia. I like the Australian market. Having said that, once the company continues to mature, we can't rule out the possibility of doing a dual listing or something like that. It is possible that at a certain point we'll want to do that.
I think also we just recently entered the technology index. which was a good milestone achievement as well for the company.
Yes, clearly, and we have more and more investors from the U.S., from Europe, from Israel, from other places that are starting to notice Weebit. I think that's maybe the big thing that I've been seeing in the past half year is the amount of interest now in Weebit, the growing interest in Weebit from outside Australia, which is a very important sign for me. So it's very exciting now to have that.
Flipping from investor interest to potential customer and production interest, we've got a question asking whether what kind of technology fairs Weebit attends, and do we go to these fairs to let the wider audience know what we're building? So the question's coming from someone who's saying, well, when you've got players like Intel, SanDisk, Western Digital, NVIDIA, and so on at these fairs, does Weebit also attend so that these companies know what we're doing and what we could achieve?
We've attended and we will attend some of these fairs. You know that, for example, last year, it wasn't the last business trip, one before last business trip that I did in January of 2020 was to ISSCC, where we received an award. I think the market also knows that back in 2019, we went to FMS. We showed our neuromorphic demo there. It was the first ever demo of spiking neural networks on ReRAM. So we've been going to such fairs in the past. Obviously, in the last year, these fairs have changed their format quite a bit, and we've presented papers. I think one or two of those papers were announced even. So we are in those fairs. I would say right now the new format is good to present papers. I miss very much the exhibition where you just walk down the aisle and you see all the different companies, and that's where a lot of people who don't know about you, they see you in the aisle and they come and talk. So I really hope that we'll be going back to exhibitions. And we hired Eran as VP Marketing. One of his tasks is to get Weebit's name out there.
Thanks, Coby. A question from another shareholder. How does our ReRAM compare with TSMC's ReRAM?
Oh, that's actually a good question. And maybe it's a good opportunity for me to help the market understand. TSMC is one of the important fabs in the world. The fact that they recently announced that they will be providing ReRAM to their customers, for me, was a very, very positive thing. Because until now, when we talk to people, everyone always uses the term emerging future memory. And it's pretty hard to get into the market when everyone thinks that you're still in the future. When someone important like TSMC comes out with an announcement that they will be providing ReRAM, it really shakes the market, and suddenly everyone wakes up and says, oh my God, this isn't the future anymore. It's present, it's now, it's here. And suddenly everyone starts scrambling, oh my God, I don't have ReRAM technology yet. And it stirs up a lot of discussion. So I've been in this place many times in the past in other startups. One of the more famous startups that I was involved in, Vericity, we were actually going bankrupt because everyone considered us future technology. For 2 months, we didn't even pay salaries. We were just totally broke. And luckily for us, one of the big, the number 2 company in the industry came out with a competing product and said, we have something here in this space. And all of a sudden the market said, oh, it's not a future technology, it's an existing technology. And our sales just went up the roof very fast thanks to that. So for me, this was an amazing sign that TSMC came out with ReRAM technology, because now all of the other fabs are saying, oh, we really need to get our hands on something. And there's much more interesting discussions right now when we're talking about commercial agreements. Their technology is also an interesting technology. It's focused on a specific domain, I think, but overall, it's good to have. I think competition is good in the market. We always said we expect to see competitors, and so for me, it's really been a very positive news that they actually are selling, providing ReRAM now.
Let's obviously be clear also, just to clarify, Weebit is in a much stronger capital funding position than where Vericity was in your example.
Yes, yes, very much.
So just on the question of, the greater focus that's being put on ReRAM, question that's come in with semiconductors once again in the spotlight and the US-China trade tensions that you mentioned before, Dadi. Are you seeing, or are you expecting acquisitions in the semiconductor technology space to intensify going forward?
Well, I think it is intense already, and that's the semiconductor industry is very much it's always the innovate, integrate cycle, or innovate, acquire, where the big guys come in and see what's going on. And we've seen a lot of acquisitions happening, and I think they will continue. I don't think it's stopping anytime soon. In many aspects, it will increase. The competition in semiconductors is very critical. People look for products, we look for technologies. That's the common in the industry, and will continue to be. And we are watching very carefully what's happening.
Just continuing on the, I guess, competitor and use space, Dadi. Based on your experience, Dadi, what applications do you feel are best matched to the Weebit technology?
It depends on the phase of the company. Currently, as we talked about our phases in the technology, our first phase, what we call, is the embedded memory, where we are looking for products that would like to embed a relatively small array onto their chip, which is on a more advanced node is impossible to do with flash technology, or very expensive, to say the least. And this is where our first target is. It's an easier market to penetrate. We have a big advantage, just phase one. And that's what we're doing now. And when Coby talks about this potential fab and commercial agreements, this is in the embedded space. When we talk about the second phase, when we talk about the standalone memory, we are talking about very large arrays. These are big memory arrays that would replace what people buy flash today. And this one will vary from storage to even to potentially integrating on big silicon, very much in automotives, artificial intelligence, and big storage for the data center. This is an ongoing requirement. And this is where eventually the big revenue and the big money is. But nevertheless, it's a big investment and will take longer, as we mentioned multiple times. So we've covered very much a large possibilities of the market, from embedded to standalone memories. And the demand is huge. And the need for this new technology is growing as the current existing technology start falling short to a large extent with respect to cost and density and power.
Thanks, Dadi. Just going back to, you obviously spent a little bit of time talking about the TSMC answer, Coby. We've got a couple of questions that have come in around competitors to our technology. Does TSMC use silicon oxide like Weebit, and who else, who else is in the competitive landscape for our technology?
Okay. So TSMC uses a different material that they actually developed that technology with a research institute in Taiwan. The competitive landscape, these things keep changing. I think in the past, people looked at, there were four key startups that were dealing with in the ReRAM space. Two of those, I'm not sure where they are. Well, one of them, Adesto, was acquired already. So that's public information that Adesto was acquired. Actually, they were acquired by a company called Dialog. Adesto did some transformation and started focusing on products in the IoT space. And I believe Dialog wanted them for the IoT technology. They're more of an IoT type company, but we don't know. It's hard for me to comment on the competitors because we don't know exactly what is going on there. But I believe that Weebit's position overall in this market has been improved quite a bit over the past 2 years. If in the past I saw other companies that I considered them potentially ahead of us or really competing, I think that today, I think I can say that I believe that we are ahead of the other startups in the space, and we're feeling very positive, very good about where we are.
Thanks, Coby. We have a couple of questions that have come in specifics around customer discussions with specific parties, which obviously we can't answer for commercial reasons, so I'll skip those ones. But maybe we'll just back to Dadi, turn to the board. The board obviously has, a fantastic experience in terms of the industry exposure that you've had, Atik has had, Yoav has had, Coby has had. How do you see the strength of the board in, has it been helping in terms of opening doors and influencing potential customer negotiations? It's very rare that you see a company, let alone the size of Weebit, any company with so many, well-respected industry veterans on their board.
Well, of course we do. Just to make sure that I wish it were, but a big good name opens the door, which is very critical in this industry because many times you get ignored. So we definitely, all names that you're mentioning is helping to open the door. But it doesn't mean that people will pull out the checkbook and will write a big check the moment we come in. That doesn't happen. I think, both Atik and Yoav and I are respected. And we go in and open the doors, and so does Coby. And that helps us a lot. I think in some of the cases, it would be very hard to get in. And we are in, and we are negotiating. I will not mention names. And this will continue to be as part of our service to help the company in, to help the company, guide the company, and help the open doors. But it's a difficult process and no miracles. You expect some shortcuts in opening the doors, but as I said, at the end of the day, Coby and his team have to come in and make sure that there's a first great technology and second good fit with what the potential customer really needs at this stage, and that has to happen. This is why it's difficult and takes time, and I'm optimistic.
Thanks, Dadi. Coby, maybe a question from you, just flipping across to the discrete side. The question is that you've mentioned that you're making good progress on the discrete side, may have an array 12 months ahead of time. Can you explain how that relates back to commercialization that's different from the ReRAM commercialization that's been discussed in terms of, the goal of first commercial agreement by the middle of this year?
Okay, so I guess first I need to clarify, ReRAM is being used both in the embedded and in the discrete side. So it's the same ReRAM technology. On the discrete side, we need to add the selector, and there are other, more extreme technical requirements, I would say. In the embedded space, you basically don't need such huge arrays. You know, the arrays of kilobits, megabits are enough, and we have a good solution for that. And that's how we're moving forward in the embedded space and addressing, you know, we're starting from markets like analog and sensors and others, and moving, we'll be moving into the more advanced embedded products. The discrete, because of the size that you need to go to gigabits and tens of gigabits and above, there are more extreme requirements. So that's why it takes more time. That's why the embedded, we're already having discussions on commercial agreements around the embedded. And for the discrete, we still have several years of development. Obviously, the discrete market is huge. That's where people buy the mass amounts of memory chips. Maybe it's a good place to comment. I'm not sure how much all of the investors are aware of a recent piece of news that we should point out. A few weeks ago, maybe a month or two, there was an announcement that Tesla is recalling something like 160,000 cars. When you read into it, what happened, they had an issue with their screens. You know, the Teslas have big screens, and they had an issue with the memory chip in there. Guess what? You know, it all goes back to memory, always goes back to memory. So their flash chips in there, the endurance of flash was not high enough, and their flash chips started failing one after the other, and they had to do a mass recall. That's just an example of where, when we will have our discrete component, it will have clear advantages over that flash chip, and these kinds of things won't happen with our discrete components. So it's a good opportunity to help people understand the uses of this discrete component. With the recent raises that we had, we've managed to start already accelerating the process. We're still working on it. I don't have new dates to give you, but we are working very hard on getting this discrete component moving faster. We'll have a small array in the beginning of next year, and move forward to commercialize it as fast as we can.
Thanks, Coby. Maybe just sticking on the technology side a little bit also, another question that's come in is more around the cost side. How does silicon oxide ReRAM, which is Weebit's technology, compare to something like MRAM or other ReRAM products from a cost perspective?
Again, another good question. ReRAM is actually, and especially, you know, silicon oxide ReRAM is very easy, relatively, I should say, easy to manufacture. In terms of the fab, we're talking about adding a couple of masks and a few steps in the fab, and you're done, which basically means about adding 5% added cost per wafer. MRAM, you're talking about a lot more masks, many more steps in the fab. We estimate it to be something like 40% added cost per wafer. So today, that's why I keep telling people, MRAM is more advanced in the market today. You have already vendors that are selling MRAM in the market today, and it's moving forward. For me, this is a huge reassurance, because if people are willing to actually bring in magnetic material, which is, you know, maybe the most pollutive material you can think of, into a fab, this is a huge effort, it's huge cost, it's a big, it's a real, I call it an atomic bomb falling on the fab. You need to have a separate facility for it. You need to have very special tools and special processes, and the total cost is higher. The fact that the market is willing to work with magnetic RAM at this point is an indication of just how much the market needs new kinds of memory. So once we get out there, once we have the product out and selling, I think it'll be a very interesting situation where the customers will look and say, oh, we have something here that adds 40% to the cost per wafer and is so disruptive versus ReRAM, which is really so simpler and easier to manufacture. And this silicon oxide stuff is really neat. So again, this is one of the things that's very encouraging for me when I see how the sales of MRAM are going up. It's very encouraging.
Thanks. We'll probably have to wrap it up very shortly. So just another question that's come in, just sticking on the silicon side of things. So one of the investors has asked the question whether there's a silicon shortage that might impact manufacturing down the track.
The issue is not silicon shortage. The issue is huge demand. The demand for semiconductors is going up rapidly. And our industry goes through these cycles all the time. And I'm sure Dadi will be able to comment on it because Intel has been through that so many times. But the demand goes up so rapidly that every 2-3 years, you reach the point where the current capacity of the fabs can't meet the demand. And suddenly the prices go up and there's a big strain on the industry. Then people build more fabs and suddenly they can address that demand until the demand keeps going and you reach the next difficult point and over demand. So that's really what's going on right now, the demand. And I think the Corona year has just even fueled that, because more people want to have computers at home and do Zoom from home and communication from home, high-speed communication and all of these things. And so the demand went up, and now there's a shortage, not because there's no silicon, because there aren't enough fabs.
Thanks, Coby. Oh, sorry, Dadi, were you going to say something?
Yeah, just to add to this one. As Coby mentioned, I'm 40 years in this industry and this happens. Semiconductor is basically more important to our life than oil and fuel. We don't kind of think about that way, but Coby mentioned few of the possibilities. This is a time where people are continue to look for new technologies that will make the manufacturing faster and easier, because it helps the managing the capacity. But this will continue, and I think it's going to be ups and downs with respect to people will invest in building fabs. And I think it's good news for us that there's a still continued huge demand for semiconductors.
Thanks, Dadi. I was actually going to ask, given time, whether there was any, with Coby having started the conversation today, maybe you as chair would like to finish it off, and whether there's any sort of comments you'd like to wrap up this conversation with.
First, thanks for all the people that took the time and attended. This is very important for us to make sure that we're able to answer precisely the questions other people are guessing what's going on. We are making very good, steady progress. There's always ups and downs in technology development, but so far we continue to maintain our development, as Coby mentioned. The opportunities are there, both in embedded and much more into the discrete, which is going to take a longer time, of course. Don't expect it to be in the market anytime soon. But I think I'm very optimistic with respect to the possibilities for Weebit to be a good growing company. And I think we are very happy with the Australian market, the stock exchange. I think It's done well for the company. And thank you very much for the confidence that you have in us. And I hope that we'll continue to communicate with you and make sure that we are available for your questions and being able to bring you good answers. So thank you very much.
Dadi, thank you. Coby, thank you very much, both of you. It's been wonderful to have you give this update, talk to investors. It must be frustrating because, Coby, you normally come out every quarter to meet with investors face-to-face in Australia, but over the last 12 months, you haven't been able to. But what it's allowed us to do is actually bring Dadi into the conversation too over the last 12 months, which has been great. So thank you both for your time. Thank you for the open and discussion around how the company is progressing, the questions investors have, and really looking forward to the continued delivery of the plan as we see on this slide that's up on the screen around the next 6 months and the milestones that you're looking to achieve. So exciting times ahead. Thank you.
Oh, by the way, a question that came up several times that maybe I should answer. You mentioned going to Australia. Our team in Israel, I think practically everyone has been vaccinated already. And many people are saying, oh, so now you shouldn't have any travel restrictions. The problem is that other countries don't recognize this still. So I still can't go to Australia or China or France or whatever without having at least 2 or 3 weeks of quarantine. So, but yeah, it's, I miss coming to Australia, and I'm glad that at least we have this platform to communicate and update the investors. It's important for me that everyone understands where we stand. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody, for listening in, partaking. And if you've got any other questions, feel free to contact Eric or myself. Have a good evening, Australia. Have a good day, Israel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Tov.